Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tactics talk, guys. Let's take another slightly deeper dive into the Blesk, the new Czechoslovakian little super machine gun double-barreled auto cannon tanks. They're interesting. They're fun and a little bit funny. I don't know how good they are for the game necessarily. They are certainly a speed the game up kind of tank. And while I would say the alpha is not absolutely devastating in the right situation, it can be pretty good. You're talking about a fairly significant burst damage potential, but there are some negatives. You will have a hard time sometimes employing it. So we're going to go over some of those details, and I'll have a little after action at the end to talk a bit about some of the math on the number of shots you're going to have. You will notice right now that I've got 1,540 regular AP shells. I'm going to be honest, so far I have found little reason to shoot APCR or gold rounds. That's a bit of a departure for tanks with wargaming. What they did is they increased the pen with the APCR, but they decreased the damage significantly by 25%. So you're going to have actually 33%. So it's a 6 average damage for each shell with the standard AP, and it's a 4 average damage with each shell for the APCR. I'll talk a little bit about this later on as well, but understand that over a large number or a decent sample size, when you start talking about averages, you're really going to average about 6. You know, it's a plus or minus 25% thing, but with that many shells, what I've been seeing is if you take your shells and times it by 6 or 4 for the other round, that's more or less what you're going to get. I think you might get a little more variation off of the HE to some extent, but also a lot of it has to do with how many you pen, right? But the average of the ones that pen, they're going to sit around 6. I found that most of my bursts, if I did the math on how many penned, look at the damage it did to the tank, and then times the number of shells that pen by 6, it's right around that damage. It's pretty damn close. All right. Now the problem is, or not the problem necessarily, but the challenge, let's call it that, is employing that little cannon in the right way. So we're going to talk about this. Don't sleep on the fact that this thing can do scout stuff. It'll be out scouted by even 90s and the usual suspects, but if you take a look at its moving camo, even though it's actually kind of large, I feel like they maybe gave it more camo respect than it should have based on its size. Take a look at it against other tanks. It can do the scout thing. I'm not telling you it's an even 90, right, or an LHMTV in terms of being a tiny tank, but it doesn't do a bad job, all right? As a counter scout, it's pretty brutal as well. So let's see how we handle this. This bush is much smaller than I remember. All right, we got the bat chat, so I'm just going to take a chance here, right? We're just going to absolutely waylay this dude. I stayed in maybe a little too long, hoping for a kill. Ran out of burst damage, and that guy lives, right? So the Barask takes a chunk out of me. Watch out for this, fellas. Watch out for feeling like you can get in there and do something like that and giving up too many hit points early, where then you will struggle to have the option. We talk about maintaining your vote, right? So if you get in there early and take a couple hits and lose enough of that 1,000 hit points that you're a one-shot, these drive-by strafes are not going to be a player anymore, and you're not going to be able to do it. All right, so we're going to get there's some pretty standard poke spotting kind of stuff right there. We light a Bros being stupid, and we end up with 1,341 assist out of all that. There's another burr over there, and there's a near dead bat chat. So what I'm doing now is kind of standard forward scouting stuff, not hiding in bush scouting. Pretty standard. Mediums do this kind of thing as well. I really thought we were just going to absolutely waylay these guys. All right. I am still being extra aggressive with it right now and trying to figure out what its total capabilities are, and maybe I can learn from some of my mistakes and transpose or give that information to you and help you out. I felt like maybe I could get in here and really maul this T69, but notice he's got 1,117 hit points, and that's a little above, even if every one of the 140 shells penetrates and does damage, a little bit above being able to close this guy out. And then I also want you to watch how I engage him, because I'm going to make a critical mistake here as we come up and over. Really, I shouldn't have cut to the right. I don't know why I did that. I need to get behind him and watch when I start shooting and what happens. See how many shots I'm just shooting straight into his best armor? I've already got rid of half of my shells, and I haven't done a whole bunch of damage. When we go back around there and you take a look at the cards and we do the after action, now this is much better, right? But holy cow, if I'd have waited to his side, and somebody else hit him. I think the Mars put a shot into him as well. I may have closed this guy out, but I've really risked it for the biscuit here. I've got a Iron Arnie. You had to know there were multiple guys back here. I'm also vulnerable to guys camping out here, and this is where I'm going to get absolutely thumped by the TD whack 465. And now I've done what I talked about earlier in the video. I've given up my ability to really do any more drive-bys. I have to be basically unopposed, or maybe they're busy with something else, or they don't see me, right? So I've really given up a lot just to get 1,170 damage and 1,341 assists. But you can already see some of the possibilities with the autocannon getting in there and just mauling that poor T69. You're sitting on the order of something between 407 or 800 or so when you do these strafes, and it will completely depend on where you shoot them, how thin their armor is, right? It's nice that it's APCR if you're running the gold, or AP not, because those will not be eaten by tracks, right? If this thing was shooting heat, that would be another thing altogether. So at least the strafing won't destroy or won't be eaten by tracks. Now that's a bit of a bummer because that stupid wagon is in my way. And I was tempted, I thought maybe I'd shoot here, but that's dumb. I'm going to get spotted and probably killed. So we're just going to hang out here. Here's your scout thing, fellas. It can do it, right? In the right situation. Most scouts can. So don't go to sleep on its passive ability. And I would say, like I always say with all of this stuff, it really is, at the end of the day, situational with light tanks and with any tank. Your tank is what it needs to be at the time based on the tactical situation on the map. Now, we're winning in every way, so I'm going to get a little more aggressive. So here's a kind of medium range shot at the back, and let's see what we can do to him. Just tracking him as we go. And unfortunately ran out, didn't quite get enough, so I do, what are we looking at? It shows it in 2 or 3 batches there, right? 76, 184, and 103. That is, I think, a product of the way the damage system, or at least the damage tracking system, shows up right there. You'll notice that with these, that it kind of comes in batches right there. I am also curious, I don't know how exactly, there's another kind of long-range shot, but this guy doesn't have much armor, and I didn't wait for it to zoom in, so I think, see how much it breathed, right? Or yeah, breathed, is that, yeah, how much it breathed right there. Probably should have waited for it to zoom in. I might have got the guy dead. In fact, I probably would have if I would have waited, but still though, and look at how the batches are on that. We only did 66 and 89 and 23, so those longer range shots with this thing are absolutely going to not hit as much, especially as that dispersion just becomes insane. And we're going to rage in here. All right. There you go. I kind of did a little bit of both. I got the forward point out there. I got some early spotting and a counter scout format on the Bourrasque right there. I mauled the Bat Chat, but I wasn't quite able to take him down. Be careful about that. Not the best strafe of the T69, but you sort of get the idea of the gameplay style if that's the kind of thing you're going to do with the tank. I gave up a few too many hit points. Then I eat the Su-130 shot, and I'm taken down to a one-shot situation. I have to flex to be a little more careful. We do a little bit of passive scouting in the bush right there, grab up a little bit more ability. Though I don't think I didn't get any more assist out of any of that right there, because that 1341's been the same number for a while. The rest of the team did great. We're winning by miles, so I was sort of able to be a little more aggressive here. And I'm going to push back in this corner and see if we can't find some of the unspotted fellas. We do. All right, so I am hoping I'm going to get around him, but he's turning his hull and his turret right here, such as it is. But I'm absolutely mauling this guy, and I've already got 632 damage to him. And we only need 235, and we'll close this guy out. Oh, 10. So 2 more shells in there, and he would not have got me. But a little bit of assist chucked on the end, so we'll get that little bit of 10 that was left and add that onto our assist. And we come out of this thing with 2,381 damage, 1,771 assist. Looks like we got some more assist off something else that was either maybe the Su-130 that was down there, or potentially somebody hit the RHM while I was shooting him as well. Probably that's what happened in there. You can see again the batch of damage. It's a 233, then a 225. You'll see when we look at the cards and I go over it in the garage, kind of how the breakdowns go, what it looks like. Because when you go on the cards now, you've got a better breakdown. This is several years ago that they changed all this, but you can hover it over and it'll tell you how many hits you got. And of course, it's going to have a bunch, right? Because it's an autocannon, but it will give you the total damage that you did in that attack. Unfortunately, I think if you hit the guy twice with 2 different clips, it'll all be added together. So it's kind of hard to break out. It's always been hard to break out actually how much damage you did each shot if you hit somebody multiple times, other than coming back into the replay and sort of looking at it. It's unfortunate that's not actually on the card somehow. That would be cool if it just listed the number of shots and which one did what. Just to go off on a tangent, what I'd really like to know is what the roll would have been as far as damage, even for shots that kill guys. Say someone has less hit points than your shot would have done, right? There's probably a roll in there somewhere saying how much that shot would have done if they had the hit points. Be cool to know that. Anyway, there you go. I just wanted to bring this tank back to your attention here again as I learn, and hopefully you guys learn a little bit how to use it. I think it is perfectly suitable to be a passive scout and do the scout roll thing. Again, it's no ELC even 90, but it can do that if it need be. But it's also got that great burst potential. It's not quite as much as you might think, but still, you're talking about being able to close out tanks between 500 and 700 hit points. Not many scouts have that ability. Again, back to the even 90 with its little autoloader. It's what, 240, 220, whatever it has for each alpha. So 600 hit point tanks are in reach for things like an even 90. The same thing with this. The care has to be taken, though, that you're shooting it in the right place. You saw me do a lot of auto aim. That's appropriate for some tanks, but I think especially even in the case of the 69, and I have found it in other cases, if I was a little more careful with the aiming, I probably would have got better results. But the problem is if you're going to do a strafing attack like that, it's not easy being cheesy with the way you aim. Some people are better at it, hand-eye coordination, doing it in third person and all that stuff. But it is true, you will get better results if you're able to aim better, and that's pretty standard across the board for the game right here. So let me know what you guys think. This is the one I'm on. I finished the T17. I'm still playing that to get to the 100 Battle Challenge. I still like the autoloader tier 7, but this one has the new game mechanic of the autocannon thing, and I would say it is slightly better in damage potential than I thought it might be. I mean, obviously, the amount of damage, if you do the math, it looks like a lot. I figured, though, that it would be hard to employ it. I think it's a bit easier to employ it than I thought, but still, you are risking it when you do the drive-bys. You got to take into account how many guns are still around you, how many of your buddies are around, are you the only thing they're going to be shooting at, all the different things that you would take into account when you're going to expose yourself to shoot. But now it's a scout with not very many hit points. Still, you're talking about shutting down a 500, 700 hit point tank. There's not many scouts at tier 8 that can do that, right? You're talking some of those guys 2, 3, 4 shots depending on the alpha. And that's a poke, wait 6 seconds to reload, poke again, or longer depending on the tank. This thing can pop out and within a couple seconds delete those tanks. Pretty powerful. Pretty powerful if used in the right spot. All right, guys, that's all I've got. We'll head on back into the garage and talk about it a little bit more on the breakdown for damage. Have a great one. Well, all right, now that you've seen the battle, let's take a look at this thing. I talked about it on the video where it was the first battle. Some things I didn't really know about it. We talked a little bit about it on a coffee talk as well. But I was curious about what the expectation would be for penetrations and getting damage and all that good stuff. It's carrying, 120 rounds in each clip, I believe. Or is it 140? It's 140, all right? So 140 rounds in each magazine drum, whatever they're calling it. So if we do 140 times 6, if we're using the standard round, my friends, 140 times 6, the theoretical damage, and again, this is with no plus or minus on the damage, 140 times 6, I should be able to do this in my brain, but I can't. That's incorrect. 140 times 6 is 840. So theoretically, if you hit and pen with everything, you can close something out with 840 hit points. And I think I said somewhere between 400 and 600. Now, I have had some 700 results, but it seems to be more commonly in, I would say, the 300 to 500 damage regime. Now, you saw what we just did back there. One thing to note, you will notice when I took on the T69 that the front armor is pretty thick on that thing and angled, and I was getting a lot of bounces on that. So you really taking on the front armor of something's not good. Even a medium like that with some angling, because if you're not really aiming, and I only auto-aimed, you would probably have a better result if you did a little bit better aiming than I did. Not probably, definitely. But let's take a look then. We bring this up here with the cards. Now here's the guys that I hit, and I think I basically engaged each one of them separately. So the Borovsk, which was a long-range shot, I only got 33 of the clip of the magazine for 204. I remember the Iron Arnie was running away, a little bit bigger target, a little bit closer, 363 for 61 pens. The T69, that's the one where I was hitting the front a lot, and I was very close to it, but I only got 74 penetrations out of that. Probably could have closed him out if I'd have been a little more careful where I was shooting. I did 445, so 363, 204 at range, closer 445. Now, on the last engagement, I did some real good work on the RHM, 10 hit points short of killing him before he got me. 670 damage, so that's closing into the top, but 112 of those hit. So what's 112 times 6? 672 damage. So right about average, guys. And I would imagine, based on the plus or minus, I don't know if we're doing decimal damage on this thing or how that works, but I would bet that because the damage variations will even out over time just statistically, and there's so many shots involved in these clips that you're going to be very close almost always to the 6, right? 6 per shot over time, right? Smaller sample sizes, you may get some larger variations, but when you're talking 112 rounds into them, it's going to be pretty close. Let's see what happens with the 120. The Bat Chat, which I got 725 out of with 120 penetrations. So 120 times 6. Clear that. 120 times 6 is 720. Was that exactly 720? 725, slightly high. So you're going to be pretty close. You're going to be able to take the damage, the average damage of 6, or damage, yeah, average damage of 6, times that, especially when you start getting into the 80 to 100 to 120 rounds hitting, and it's going to be right around 6. It's going to be pretty dang close. So as you can see, it runs the gamut. You know, obviously more penetrations, higher damage, all that good stuff. Closer in, lighter tank armor like the Bat Chat or the RHM right there, you're going to get a lot more damage. Be very careful with things like the T69, where I shot him in the face a lot, and with predictable results of only 74 pens once I got around him, wasn't able to quite close him out. Very interesting tank. So learning as we go there, and it really is just a little assassin when it jumps out. Thanks for tuning in, fellas. That's all I've got. See ya. Good luck out there.